like to use as a subject from which to speak this afternoon the other America. And I use this subject because there are literally two Americas. One America is beautiful, and in this America, millions of young people grow up in the sunlight of opportunity. But tragically and unfortunately, there is another America. Little children in this other America are forced to grow up with cloud forming every day in their little mental sky.
Yes, we do live in a period where changes are taking place. The real question is whether we have the will.
Everyone. My name is Dr. Geneva Craig, and I'm here to talk to you about a man who is so important in the development of my life. And I hope what I pass on to you will help change your life. I was born in Selma, Alabama. Now, Selma, Alabama, at the time when I was born, was quite different than what it is today. I was born in a family of love and caring. My world was safe and secure, I thought. I started noticing that when we would go to the Crest or the Woolworths or the Rexall drugs, that we couldn't even buy a soda. I'm a teenager now, mid-teens, really aware and getting really, really angry because I was seeing a very unfair, unjust world. We organized with the people who came to Selma to help us, Dr. King's disciples. And they taught us Dr. King's philosophies. They taught us about being respectful. They taught us the non-violent theories and applications. And they educated us about civil rights. History will give you some guidance on where you should go in the future. My history of being held subservient, my parents' history of being held subservient, being denied education, being denied jobs, being denied their civil rights. That's history. And we have to make sure it does not repeat itself. Your voice is powerful.
Rock steady, baby, that's what I feel now. My favorite thing about Dr. King was his philosophy for equality.
He was a black, courageous man who wanted to improve our country.
He taught that education is very important to becoming a catalyst for change.
Martin Luther King Jr. saved the world by walking down the streets and making people believe that they could do stuff that they didn't think they could do.
Hi guys. How are you?
Good.
Good. And so I understand y'all been learning about one of the most important figures in our history. Is that right?
Yes.
Who?
Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What do you think a superintendent does?
Isn't a superintendent like the head person of the school?
Yeah, exactly. I'm the one who is held accountable and should be for everything that happens in our schools, in all the schools.
A lot of people like Dr. King because he was a leader. What makes someone a good leader, and why is this that important?
The reason that it's important to have good leaders is because that person who's leading is leading people somewhere. And one of the things I appreciate about Dr. King is this idea of making people better. And so if you've got a leader who's leading other people, and that leader is doing the right thing and showing moral courage, what do you think the followers are more likely to do?
Show more courage.
And do the right thing. Yeah, exactly. And so that's what leadership is, and that's why it's important to have good leaders when we've got leaders.
And so I would urge you to study hard, to burn the midnight oil. I would say to you, don't drop out of school, and I understand.
Leadership is nothing more than the ability to influence people, right? If you have a common theme, a common mission, a common vision, the opportunity that you take then to create motion, create fire, not just a spark of hope or righteous dissension, but fire. Dr. King is called a leader, absolutely, in all the ways that you can think of a leader. But he did a great job of following what the people were asking for and what they were doing. And that's what our folks do on that campus. That's what our students are doing religiously, and definitely what I try to do.
It's much easier to integrate a bus than it is to make genuine integration a reality and quality education a reality in our schools. It's much easier.
Martin Luther King said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character are the goals of true education." What did he mean by that?
Oh, I love that. Intelligence plus character is true education. I mean, so Maurice, I'm gonna use your writing example again. Maurice learns to write, and he gets better at writing, and so that's intelligence. He's writing, he's reading, he's doing those things. So that's one piece. But then what's it? It's paired with intelligence and character, right? Yeah, I had somebody tell me once that your character is what you do when nobody's looking. And that's what that intelligence, that working on writing and reading and math, plus this idea of understanding what's right and what is good and what helps, more importantly, you said this, Esther, working with others, what helps others get better too. That's those two things combined that I think Dr. King was talking about.
Also, your character that reflects on other people.
Oh, for sure.
Huge thing at school.
It's huge. It's also huge for your first question about leadership, like how you're going to choose to be, like what your character is. That matters to the people you're leading, right?
This is a free question, but what does equality mean to you?
Equality? Equality means sameness, right? That that everybody gets the exact same thing. One of the things that we talk about all the time is this idea of equity, which is a little bit different, because the reality is sometimes somebody needs more and somebody can get by with less. And so we talk about that in the Medford School District. Our definition of equity is knowing every student by name, right, first, by strength, what are you good at, and by need. What is the need there? And then working to meet those needs. So, and it may be that you struggle with writing. You're like, oh, writing. Well, there's a need. And so we want to help meet that need. Does that make sense?
Segregation unconstitutional. Anybody can look around the ghetto and see that ghetto schools are predominantly segregated and devoid of quality.
My maternal grandmother, who ultimately had 15 children, including my mom, always dreamed of education and hoped it was something that she could be a part of. And when she was a girl, there was no high school available for her to attend. She actually went back to school and became the oldest college graduate from the School of Social Work at Arizona State University. And it inspired my parents to encourage my sister and I to pursue educational goals. And I believe strongly that the direction our family has been able to take, the privilege that we're able to exercise in the world, the resources that we access are tied to our access to education.
Yes, our slogan must be, learn, baby, learn, so that we can earn, baby, earn.
One of my favorite things about Martin Luther King was he fought for civil rights and equal rights for us.
Mm-hmm.
And what is yours?
Oh, well, I talked a little bit about courage, and one of the things that always strikes me about Dr. King is how courageous he was. He's an incredible writer and thinker, and his vision of seeing who we can be, I always walk away reading his words. I always walk away inspired and wanting to be better because of the words that he wrote.
What is being done to ensure that everyone feels safe, included, and has equal access to a good education in our area?
If you build a house and you have the most beautiful walls and the prettiest roof and the chimney is perfect, but your foundation is terrible, that's what the house sits on, what happens to the house? Yeah, it falls down. It just falls down. And so the foundation has to be safety. We're talking about this definition of equity, about knowing every student by name, strength, and need, and doing something about it. So that looks like a couple of things. One, making sure that we're hearing the voice of students and saying, where do you not feel safe, or where do you feel safe, and building on that. Thanks, guys. This has definitely been the highlight of my day. Thank you for making time. I love the questions, and I look forward. I'm going to come visit AfroScoutz. Would that be all right?
Yeah.
All right. That sounds good. All right. Bye-bye.
This one particular evening, Dr. King came over and he said, I need some help. And he talked to us and he said that he'd heard about this group of teenagers who were snatching purchases from people who had gone in the stores. And he needed our help to contact whomever and to get them to stop. Well, I was kind of mouthy. I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? Stop. I said, they need to suffer the consequences. And I looked at him and then he goes, it is not along the lines of the movement. And we really need, can you help us? And I promised him I would do what I could. Well, Dr. King saw me outside Brown Chapel on the side and he goes, Craig, right? He says, you are an intelligent young lady. You are smart. You could do anything in life that you choose. The one thing that you must learn is patience. what? Patience.
Conditions, whether it's in housing, or in the economic area, or in school. But in spite of all this, I think we all know, basically, that we want to be men. We want to be persons judged not on the basis of the color of our skin, but on the basis of the content of our character. But you know,
if you want to be more like Dr. King, you want to be able to speak up for yourself and probably be able to listen to other people.
He was one of the only people that did that big of a protest with that many people joining in on him.
King was, of course, like this amazing role model. He inspired thousands, millions of people. But I feel like we should all be like King. Like we can't just rely on one person to, tell us that we can get this, we can do this. We have to come together and realize it as a whole. It's got to be more than one.
Rock steady, baby.
What's it like being the mayor?
It's different. It's probably a lot different than most people think, because in the city of Medford we have a unique charter. So the mayor is more of like the ceremonial head of the city. It's a voluntary position. Most people don't know that. All of our elected officials in the city of Medford are volunteers, even though we're elected.
My favorite thing about Dr. King is his courage, so what are you guys' favorite things about him?
Dr. King is a strong figure in my youth growing up. I grew up in Atlanta. I like the fact that he had, like you say, the courage to stand up for what was right, and it wasn't a matter of maybe the next guy, it'll be his responsibility, or maybe it'll change. He's like, now is the time I'm going to do something, and that's what's great about Dr. King to me.
My one favorite thing, and I think of it as we sit here now, is that if it wasn't the work and the time and the effort that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King put into all of his life, allows me and you the opportunity to sit here today and raise our voices.
I think my favorite thing is the sound of his voice in my heart. There are people who can speak to your head, but with Dr. King, his voice resonates in a heart space.
Yes.
For me, I hear that voice, I hear that timbre, I hear him talking about his children, I hear the moments of anger. It moves me to action. I don't just think, oh, something ought to happen. I feel it has to happen, and I love that about him.
If Dr. King was still here today, what would be one question you'd ask him?
We couldn't sit in the front of the bus in his time. Rosa Parks and many of the people, and he was being hit with water hoses at that time. That's the society he was in. Now here's a president, here's generals, here's people in power. But yet, would that satisfy him, or would he want more change? That would be great to hear.
What does being a leader mean to you?
For me, being a leader means to learn all that I can possibly learn and give it away. Dr. King did that. That is part of what made Dr. King a great leader, is he experienced things, he learned things, and he gave it away. And so that's being a good leader. We live, we learn, we share, we listen, and we grow strong.
We need to ensure that we are maintaining people's civil rights. That is something that we need to ensure as leaders in government, is that people's civil rights are protected.
So while the law may not change the hearts of men, It can and it does change the habits of men. When you begin to change the habits of men, pretty soon the attitudes will be changed. Pretty soon the hearts will be changed.
I am drawn to what he said the night before he was shot. And he said, all we said to America was be true to what you said on paper. Now, so how do we really live? All men are created equal, and each have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I work on supporting the development of leadership capacity in our community via the Humane Leadership Institute, through Local Innovation Works. Dr. King called us to live true to our word, right, as Americans. And so there's still so much work to do. There's still so much suffering in our society. And so we are looking for very practical ways to kind of make his dreams a little bit more real for everyone here in Southern Oregon.
And so there's a great deal that the Negro can do to develop self-respect. There's a great deal that the Negro must do and can do to amass political and economic power within his own community and by using his own resources. So we must...
Martin Luther King Jr. said, freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. What does this mean to you?
People are largely self-referential. If you have a system that's working for you, you might not think about the fact that it doesn't work for someone else. Now, is everybody like that? Of course not. But we don't always raise our voices. We don't always step in to try to be the change we want to see in the world, because it gets scary for people. You know, in our little town, we have a hard time getting people to run for office because they get afraid of putting their neck out, of being visible, of being seen. But that's what it takes. So to me, it means the fight's never over.
Dr. King's entire life was spent to end discrimination. What is it that our community does to end discrimination?
When you see racism, you call it out, and that's how you end discrimination. It's at the individual level. I mean, a city is an entity, but there's individuals that could have problematic behavior, and you have to call that out and take care of it and remove it when you see it.
You know, I want to share something with you. As young, beautiful Black queens coming up, is that to be afraid, to be scared, to be nervous, it's natural, it's normal. We did have one council meeting in person. When I was walking into that room, I was excited. I get in my car, I'm excited. I walk in the room, I'm nervous. And I'm thinking, uh-oh. And I said to myself, something that my great-grandmother always told me, let them see you. Tatum, what does that mean to you?
Like, you can't expect other people to love you if you don't love yourself. So first you gotta like show pride in yourself, and then others will follow.
That's right, that's right. Anna.
Well, I think it means that you just gotta be yourself, and you don't change the way you are for other people.
That's right, and that's what I did, and that's what I heard, and I knocked it out.
And justice. Don't allow anybody to pull you so low as to make you hate them. Don't allow anybody to cause you to lose your self-respect to the point that you do not struggle for justice.
I'm Val Rogers, Executive Director of Rogue World Music. And our mission is to build community and cultural connection through world music experiences. My feeling is that Dr. Martin Luther King is one of the greatest individuals that's ever lived. Very thoroughly educated and grounded. He brought a degree of moral authority to the civil rights movement that was extraordinarily powerful.
I think through a combination of efforts, this problem can be solved. I think the new administration must see the necessity of moving through executive orders, through legislative channels, and and through moral persuasion. And I always keep that at the forefront because I think there's a great deal.
So, if you guys could make a commitment to future generations and to Dr. King, what would it be?
My commitment is to give voice. I think it starts there. I read something the other day about this, about what community and connection means. Being at the table is one thing. Speaking at the table is another. Being heard while at the table is belonging. So my commitment would be so that everyone in this town gets to be at the table and be heard. We belong to each other. My commitment is to give voice and to listen so you know you belong. I don't think there's any greater feeling than that. And that's what I can do. I think I can do that.
So to me, I think that the city is taking great strides and efforts, and we have a really engaged city council that works well together and is extremely prepared, and they're doing everything they can to make Medford a better place for everyone. And I think the commitment from the city is that we're going to be an inclusive, diverse, equitable city that everyone can enjoy and prosper in. And I think that's the mission of the city, and I believe that our city council all feels the same way.
So in your studies of Martin Luther King and what you've seen and read, how do you think our current climate is, and how you think he would feel about it today?
Yeah, I think that he'd be pretty satisfied, but he'd still say there's a lot more to be done because racism and discrimination is still a thing, and that's what we're trying to change. How does it feel being the first Black councilman?
I didn't view my skin color first as a factor, but I think that it opens doors for those who could look to me and say, hey, this community doesn't have that kind of opportunity for people of like skin color. It does, and here's this example. So I think that if I have any part to play, if that is a positive, then that's great too.
You are the first Black city councilor here.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
This is so important that your voices are at the table. So if we have to start with mine first here in Ashland and Southern Oregon, then let it be. Because where I am right now, I feel like this is my time to be able to open the door and make that pathway for you, youth, to walk through and come in. That's what Dr. King did for us, and that's what I want to do for you.
When I think about police and sheriffs and deputies, that used to instill fear in us because they were allowed to beat us, throw us in jail, and deny our rights. So calling the police was not an option. We lived in fear. I went to jail a lot. I went to jail so much that I did not believe that I would live.
When he was marching, he could have gotten killed at any point, but he still had the courage to go out there and march for everything.
Thank you for helping Black people.
He wants to be able to help people, and he wants to be calm, because if he was angry and yelling, probably no one would listen to him.
I would like to know what you all know about Dr. King and how he influences your day-to-day life.
Well, I think it's going back to Martin Luther King, he always had a vision, and he had courage to keep going. And you had mentioned that he'd gotten in trouble a few times, but it didn't stop him. And I think as law enforcement leaders, that's the same thing that we have to do. We have to continue to look into the future, keep looking at ways that we can continue the lines of communication and make this relationship better, and have the courage to do it.
The liaison program is a program that came from an ongoing conversation between our police departments and base of Southern Oregon. And the goal of the program is to break down the barriers of communication between members of the local Black community and Jackson County law enforcement agencies. This is, to my knowledge, a first of its kind in the nation model that we're working on setting up, and it very easily could be seen as a new national best practice for police departments better engaging with members of the Black community and rebuilding that relationship that has deteriorated over time.
Do you think that being a part of the police force changes how the community sees you?
Yeah, I think over the years, there's been a lot of negativity towards law enforcement in general, towards a uniform per se, or towards the profession. So we've worked really hard as a law enforcement community to try to build bridges with our community, and it's not perfect, but it's a constant evolution.
We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied.
I know that the kids are the ones that are wanting to have the conversation, but it's the adults that are uncomfortable. So leading anti-racist conversations is part of what I do. And I have them because I know that for people that are listening, they're wanting to be better allies. Dr. King believed that we're capable of having a better future. And I can't think of a better way to create a better future than giving future generations the tools necessary to not only be not racist, but to be actively anti-racist.
This is the tragedy of racism because its ultimate logic is genocide. One says that I am not good enough to live next door to him merely because of my race. He is saying consciously or unconsciously that I do not deserve to exist.
If we could put a fifth figure up on Mount Rushmore, I'd say Martin Luther King is the person who ought to go there. He's had such an impact. He was often called the King of Love. That's a phrase that you find when you hear people who knew him and who walked with him. Love was a central part of his message. I'm the Oregon State Coordinator for FAIR. FAIR is the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. And FAIR is a group that is trying to recover Dr. King's message. It's a group that wants to recover not just the message of the civil rights movement, the original civil rights movement, but the spirit of the civil rights movement, the idea of soul force that Dr. King talked about, the strength to love, the idea that how we deal with those issues is as important as dealing with those issues.
Well, I don't think of love as, in this context, as emotional bosh. I don't think of it as a weak force, but I think of love as something strong and that organizes itself into powerful.
Probably our biggest factor in choosing to hire somebody is looking at their character, because we believe that hiring the right person with a good moral character, we can teach them to do the ins and outs of the job, but you can't necessarily teach or correct someone's character.
I've seen stuff that recently that I cannot look at it and say, all right, there's a good explanation behind that. That is categorically wrong what that officer did, and we can't excuse it by saying that he got caught up with emotion or got caught up in the moment and whatnot. and that it sickens me. Frankly, it pisses me off because it sets this entire conversation back 10 steps every time something like that happens. And so we're trying as much as we can, we're doing everything we can to avoid those rightfully so disgusting moments that you see on TV. And we're holding ourselves accountable, and we're following those national best practices that we have all subscribed to for a long, long time.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. It was great to meet all of you and to have this conversation.
Thank you for listening to our questions.
Yeah.
He wanted equality. He was kind.
The favorite thing is that he has the courage to help Black people.
One of the things I'd probably ask him is, like, if he ever got scared of what he was doing. Just because, yeah, it's not every day that you meet someone who does all the things that he did.
What's SORETI and how does it work?
SORETI is where I work. It's an acronym, which means it stands for something. It's Southern Oregon Regional Economic Development, which is a lot of words, but really what we do is we try to help businesses make money and succeed and help to make our community and our economy a vibrant and good place to be.
Both SORETI and the state of Oregon, in addition to banks, have our own loan program. So if somebody's looking for some money to grow their business, they can go to a bank, and sometimes they can't borrow all the money that they need for the project from a bank. SORETI and the state can give a little bit of that loan. So a lot of what I do is I'll be listening in one meeting, learning about what a problem or an opportunity is, and then connecting them to some other folks who I learned about in a different meeting who might have the solution to the problem that the folks in the first meeting were talking about.
So your job is kind of like a messenger?
Yeah, a lot of it is about communication and just sharing information. I don't know, you've ever heard the expression, knowledge is power, right? There's a lot of information that some people have in our society, right? And that not everybody has access to. So it's important, I think an important part of my role is to try to share information that I learn about with as many people as I can, because I work for the state, I work for everybody, right?
So I think the young people in the Negro community who are raising these questions are raising some very profound questions about our total society. In other words, they are saying...
Dr. King understood what he was up against. And the Negro Revolution did not say, we want our voting rights. Yes, they were fighting for voting rights. They did not say, we want police to stop beating us. Yes, they wanted police to stop beating us. But what did they say? They focused on ending segregation in schools, ending discrimination in housing, and ending discrimination in banking and access to capital.
I wanted to ask you, like, one of your favorite things that Martin did.
My favorite thing about Dr. King is just his consistent dedication to just caring about people. So we go about things not in a violent way, but we just have conversations about things. Do you guys want to answer that question?
First thing that comes to mind that is relevant for me right now is that I get to go to school with white children and learn the same things that they are.
Well, I really like that he was like very, very selfless, and I think he wasn't just talking for Black people in general. He was talking for all those people that weren't white.
That was something that was always really important to me, is that we look at everybody And we see the potential as humans, not just as what they look like or where they might be from, but they're people, right? Yeah.
What philosophies of kings do you live by?
He was able to still communicate so effectively in a way that even people that disagreed with him could hear him. And when I think about all the things that we disagree about now in our country and how rare that is, right? So many of our leaders can't talk in a way to people that they disagree with in a way that they can hear them. They can only sort of yell at them and tell them that they're wrong. So I think that's another lesson that we could take for sure.
When we look at modern man, we have to face the fact that modern man suffers from a kind of poverty of the spirit, which stands in glaring contrast to his scientific and technological abundance. We've learned to fly the air like birds, we've learned to swim the seas like fish, and yet we haven't learned to walk the earth as brothers and sisters.
Dr. King was the first person in my life that exposed me to the challenges of race. I went into the office and there was a letter from BASE. So I reached out, one thing led to another, we started talking and came up with the idea of a formal partnership between BASE and BRIT. That just, kind of blew up into this great partnership where we had a lot of involvement from the Black community for the first time ever.
Where we are dealing with hard economic and social issues. And it means that the job is much more difficult. It's much easier to integrate a lunch.
What are you doing everything in our power to establish businesses from Black owners, community to succeed in our area?
Well, I think the first thing that we can do is we need to have discussions with people about race and understand that is sometimes a deterrent. If you're a Black person, are you at a disadvantage for starting up a business? And if you feel like you are, is that a barrier that we can overcome? What can we do to help you start a business? Other resources or networks like BASE that we could tap you into to help get you some support. That's what we're all about. We want to get more diversity and have the conversations about how we can grow that in the region.
Dr. King thought that that representation of Black community was very important to all aspects of society. What is economics just as important? How is it just as important?
If you have more money in our country, I think unfortunately you tend to have more political power. So I think it's really important that all communities in the U.S. have economic power as well, because that translates into other kinds of power and influence in our society.
I think it's really important that everybody's voice is heard. Economics is just the same as everything else. Everybody has money, everybody's got to spend their money, and almost everybody has to have a job, right? And we need to know that everybody is engaged in that.
Anytime there's somebody who doesn't have access to their potential, doesn't have access to the education, or doesn't have access to the entrepreneurship to make new innovations, right? We all lose when those people get excluded.
You guys talked earlier about what you want to be, right? I think having these conversations is a huge first step to that. When I was growing up, we didn't have conversations like this. We didn't talk about race. We didn't talk about any of those issues. And today you guys are here, making us talk about them and encouraging other people to talk about them. And as you do that, it becomes a conversation and it becomes another step forward. And that's really important to the future.
This is the most important and crucial period of your lives, for what you do now and what you decide now at this age may well determine which way your life shall go.
The reality is that there will never be anyone that will come along and do exactly what he's done.
One thing that nonviolence says is that your aim is not to destroy or annihilate the opponent, but to win his friendship and understanding. And
is Dr. King needed? I think Dr. King-ish person would be welcome. That if we just had a little King in every community, starting to heal those communities, starting to wake us up to, wake us up to those who are homeless and houseless, waking us up to those who have food insecurities. I mean, just things like that. Those are the Martin Luther Kings in the areas doing that work.
It is easy to speak for children, but when we can listen to their voices, we get to the heart of what their needs are. That's how we can fulfill Dr. King's legacy. He would have listened. We're all charged with listening to those voices and taking the steps we can to help children reach their full potential.
We focus first on the most vulnerable populations because by lifting them up, we all benefit.
I think that the most important thing that we can do is talk to people that don't look like us, that don't think like us, that don't live like us.
What is your own arena that you are active in and that you are comfortable in? And make the commitment to move the needle in your arena, and then do it.
He wouldn't say these evil people, he would say these are sick people. These are people who are not thinking about the world the way that they should be. He had some compassion. The idea that being anti-racist isn't enough. We have to be pro-human too.
Dr. King's disciples, and he talked about love. So all that anger that I have for white people, and believe me, I generalize to all of them, I had to work on it. I had to start doing what he encouraged us to do, is to focus on the person, the individual. Youth, you stand on our shoulders and we want you to take it even further. The words of Dr. King is not hate, but become well-educated. And you can use the system to make things better for all. Not just black people, make things better for all. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Dr. King, what is he saying? Use your voice. Your voice is powerful.
However young you are, you have a responsibility to seek to make your nation a better nation in which to live. You have a responsibility to seek to make life better for everybody. And so you must be involved in the struggle for freedom and justice.
Martin had a dream, and now we have a vision.
We can no longer be numb to racism. We need our entire community to step up.
It's time to be loud and be vocal.
Our standard should be a zero tolerance for racism.
It's time for everyone to feel empowered.
No longer shall we survive, we shall all thrive.
We are making our community commitment
to use our voices today and each day,
so that we can help right the wrongs.
Whether it's socially, economically, politically, or educationally,
our futures must change for the better.
And get better and better.
Today and every day.
We promise to use our voices. How about you?
Come on, y'all. Sing that song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. All right now. All right. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought. Hey. Facing the rising sun. The new day begun, and let us march on till the victory's won.
you so much to AfroScoutz for your leadership and for using your voices to help build a just and equitable society. Emerging leaders like you make me feel very optimistic about the future that we can build together.